MadCity. MadCity is an open-world action game developed by Swifty Studios, where players can choose to be a hero, police officer, or criminal and take part in battles, heists, and prison escapes across a large interactive city. The game shares many similarities with Jailbreak, allowing players to choose a side and either rob banks and stores or stop criminals before they get away. MadCity released on December 3rd, 2017, but didn't explode in popularity until early 2019. Over time, the game accumulated more than 2 billion visits and peaked with an average of about 20,000 to 30,000 concurrent players. Much of its early success came from rising alongside Jailbreak, with both games appealing to the same audience and competing for the top spot. This rivalry helped fuel interest, and for a period, MadCity was even ahead of Jailbreak in average players. However, MadCity's momentum began to slow in 2020 as the game started receiving fewer updates. Meanwhile, Jailbreak continued releasing consistent content, which caused many players to switch over. Without regular updates to keep the game fresh, MadCity's player count steadily declined, and the hype surrounding the rivalry eventually faded. Today, MadCity averages around 500 players, a massive drop from its earlier years, and the number continues to decrease as the game struggles to maintain the audience it once shared with Jailbreak. Doors has 7 billion visits and averaged hundreds of thousands of players in its peak. Doors is a first-person horror game where players attempt to progress through a series of randomly generated rooms, each marked by a numbered door, while surviving dangerous entities that can appear at any time. Up to 6 players can enter an elevator together and work as a group to reach the end of the floor, searching drawers for keys, items, coins, and tools along the way. Players can also hide in wardrobes or under beds to avoid certain threats, adding a layer of strategy to every run. The game features both fully random rooms and predetermined ones that appear in different orders, helping each playthrough feel slightly different. The game was released on August 10th, 2022, and quickly surged into popularity thanks to its good graphics and unique concept. The game reached the top of the Roblox platform just days after its release, averaging around 70,000 players, and later saw averages closer to 100,000 after its first major update. However, the game's momentum started slowing down only a few months later. Many players felt that the idea of searching rooms, collecting items, and opening doors over and over again started to become repetitive over time. This issue was made worse by the long gaps between updates, which often took months to release. Without new content to keep players interested, the player count gradually declined. Today, Doors averages around 10,000 players, a significant drop from its peak. While it remains respected as one of Roblox's highest quality horror games, its slow update schedule and repetitive formula have led to a noticeable decline in daily players. Piggy is an online survival horror game that has multiple chapters and makes up an overall story. Piggy was created by Minitoon. The game was inspired by the classic horror game Granny and the children's show Peppa Pig, combining both ideas into something completely new. Piggy features a variety of modes, where players can be assigned as either the survivor or Piggy, with additional trader and tagger roles in their own modes. For survivors, the goal is to complete the tasks around the map and escape or reach the final objective before the timer runs out. Meanwhile, Piggy's job is to stop them by eliminating every survivor or running out the clock. Piggy was created on January 22nd, 2020, and exploded in popularity shortly after its release, mainly thanks to Flamingo playing it in one of his videos. Because of this quick growth, Minitoon began releasing consistent weekly updates, usually dropping a brand new chapter every update. Each chapter ended with some cliffhanger, keeping players excited and waiting for the next part of the story. These fast-paced updates helped the game grow even more, and at the time, Piggy broke the record for being the fastest Roblox game to reach 1 billion visits, hitting the milestone only 79 days after its release. The game became so big that almost every Roblox YouTuber was making videos on it, including Creekcraft, Flamingo, and even DanTDM. In total, Piggy has reached almost 14 billion visits and averaged around 200,000 players during its prime. But the hype didn't last forever. Once the final chapter of Piggy Book 1 was released, which was chapter 12, it meant no more new chapters, which were the updates players looked forward to the most. After that, many players began leaving, and the player count started dropping. The decline slowed down briefly when Piggy Book 2 came out, giving players a new storyline, new challenges, and more updates. This brought the game back into the spotlight for a short time, but it didn't last. Piggy Book 2 simply wasn't as good as the first book, and instead of weekly updates, new chapters were coming out monthly, which was just too long of a wait to keep people playing. On top of that, many YouTubers quit Piggy after the end of Book 1, which only sped up the drop in popularity, and this decline in players only continued to drop over the coming months. Now, Piggy struggles to average just 10,000 players, a more than 90% decrease from what it once was. In-game is a Roblox recreation of the popular Netflix series Squid Game. The gameplay focuses on completing a series of challenges inspired by the show, with the main objective being to survive every round and remain the last player standing. Players progress through multiple tasks that test timing, precision, and decision-making, all while competing against dozens of other players doing the same thing. In-game gained massive traction shortly after its release, reaching around 2 billion visits and averaging about 200,000 concurrent players at its peak. Much of this success came from the global popularity of Squid Game at the time, which created a lot of of interest in Roblox Squid Game recreations and helped the game spread quickly across the platform. For several months, in-game maintained its high player count as new seasons and content from the show kept interest alive. However, the game's momentum began to slow once updates started taking longer to release, and when new updates did arrive, players often felt that they were rushed or lacked polished compared to earlier updates. The game's popularity also depended heavily on the hype around the Squid Game series itself. Once the latest season of the show had been out for a while, interest in the concept started fading, and in-game's player count declined along with it. Several controversial updates, such as the playable guards feature, also contributed to the drop in engagement. While intended to introduce new gameplay options, these updates were frequently viewed as rushed or poorly balanced. Over time, these issues led to fewer returning players and a steady decline in activity. Today, in-game averages around 30,000 players, far lower than its original peak, and the number continues to decrease as interest in both the game and the show slows down. Loomian Legacy. Loomian Legacy is a turn-based creature-catching RPG created by Llama Train Studios, where players explore the world, battle trainers, and collect creatures known as Loomians. Inspired heavily by Pokemon, the game follows a story about uncovering the mysteries behind a shattered stone tablet, while training your team to take on increasingly difficult challenges. The game was released on July 20th, 2019, and it has earned over 800 million visits, and once averaged around 2,000 to 4,000 concurrent players. However, Loomian Legacy's popularity started to decline as updates began taking longer and longer to release. There was even once a 3-year gap between major updates, which left the community with little new content to look forward to. During this time, many players moved on, and the game struggled to maintain its momentum. Another issue was the lack of communication from the developers. For example, they announced an update delay on the same day that the update was supposed to release. This lack of communication made players feel disconnected from the development process. All of this resulted in a steady drop in players. Loomian Legacy now averages around 500 to 1,000 concurrent players, less than half of what it once had, and the numbers continue to decline as the long gaps between updates take their toll. Blox Fruits. Blox Fruits is a popular multiplayer pirate-themed game based off the anime series called One Piece, where players level up by fighting enemies and bosses, completing quests, and using mysterious Blox Fruits that grant special abilities. The main goal is to become the strongest player by grinding for levels, earning in-game cash, and upgrading weapons, ships, and stats. The game has 56 billion visits and averaged about 500 to 700,000 players during its prime. Blox Fruits was released on June 8th, 2019, and slowly rose to become a top 5 Roblox game on the leaderboard for many months. The game became popular due to the sheer amount of stuff to do in the game. There was seemingly endless content, as new updates would come out before you could even explore the current one. And unlike most other games, the developers of Blox Fruits actually asked the community which updates they wanted to see, and they usually listened, which helped build a stronger community and satisfy the players. Each new update on the game seemed to be better than the last, and each update had a lot of content, which helped keep players playing even long after the last update. The game got even more popular when they released their biggest update yet, which included a third sea, new islands, new items, new abilities, and more. With this update, Blox Fruits reached new heights, averaging around 500,000 players consistently for a while, as there was so much for players to do and explore in the new update. This didn't last forever though, as eventually updates started taking longer and longer to come out, while the updates also seemed to get worse and worse. Many new updates also started to just include painful grinding to get the newly added things, like for example, the Leviathan Island was an update added that included having to find and defeat a giant Leviathan to unlock new gears and abilities, but the Leviathan took players forever to find to even have a chance of defeating it. As updates started becoming seemingly worse, updates also started taking forever to release, with new updates sometimes even taking more than a year to come out. All of these things have contributed to the downfall of Blox Fruits. The game now still averages around 300,000 players due to its strong community, but the player count has only been slowly going lower each month. Royale High. Royale High is a popular fantasy role-playing and dress-up game developed by Call Me Bob. In the game, players attend the magical high school and can attend classes, roleplay, and customize their avatars with a vast collection of clothing and accessories. Players create and customize their avatars to embody magical creatures like fairies and mermaids. They can attend classes on subjects like gardening and literature, go on adventures in different realms, decorate their dorm rooms, and engage in social roleplay with other players. Royale High has more than 10 billion visits and averaged hundreds of thousands of players in its prime, making it one of the biggest games on Roblox during that time. This didn't last forever though, as the game started losing popularity. This happened because there was many controversial updates that happened that made the community feel like the developers were not listening to them. There was also a problem with the currency at one point, as prices of items skyrocketed because of the growth of new players and overall gems being earned. This caused everything to become expensive and feel like a grind. Things got worse when trading was added to the game, because the game became all about trading items and showing off your best items instead of the fun roleplay that the game used to be about. The devs also started becoming lazy and gave mediocre updates, despite promising good ones. All of this combined led to the game losing more and more players over time. Royale High now sits at an average of around 10 to 20,000 players, which is nothing compared to where it once was. Meepcity. Meepcity is a social hangout and roleplay experience created by Alex Neutron. The game features minigames, fishing, house customization, pets called Meeps, and at one point, its iconic party system. The main focus of Meepcity was always social interaction. Players could decorate their homes with coins earned in-game, customize their Meeps, and spend hours chatting, roleplaying, and meeting new friends. It was very similar to Club Penguin. With over 16 billion visits and an average around 80,000 players at its peak, Meepcity became one of the biggest games on Roblox. A huge part of that popularity came from the role-playing aspect and party feature, which allowed players to host their own private servers inside their customized Meepcity houses. But the party system also became Meepcity's biggest problem. Over time, players began using parties for malicious and inappropriate behavior, stuff that quickly got out of control. Despite this happening for years, Alex Neutron refused to address the issue or moderate the parties properly. The problems continued for nearly 6 years before he finally removed the feature entirely. Once parties were gone, Meepcity lost its main appeal. Many players who loved the game specifically for that feature left immediately, and the game never recovered from the drop. Today, Meepcity averages only about 300 players, and that number only continues to fall.